Welcome to Untrended, where we lift the lid on extraordinary ideas about business and culture. I'm Nick Jones, and with me today are Louise Brooks, Senior Copywriter, Jamie Fewery, Creative Director, and Billy Hamilton-Stent, Chief Strategy Officer. We are officially back for Season 2, and today we're diving into a topic that's been quietly shaking up B2B marketing, creator-led content. Creators are nothing new in the B2C space, but short-form video, humour and authenticity are becoming a much bigger business in B2B. I'm excited to be chatting to Heather Barnett, one of the creators who's been making waves in B2B, by bringing some lulz to our LinkedIn screen. We'll explore how she got into it, what makes a creator-led campaign succeed, and the common mistakes brands make when trying to play in this space. After that, our panel are going to take a broader look at the rise of B2B creators. We'll talk about why brands are investing here, our experiences of working with creators, and how agencies and brands can navigate this new terrain without lapsing into cringe. Let's get into it. Hi, Heather. Thank you so much for joining me. We're really thrilled to have you on the podcast today in our episode all about creators without cringe and the flourishing world of B2B creators, particularly on LinkedIn. So just to kick things off, would you be able to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what inspired you to get into this world? I know obviously you have a marketing background, but what was it that made you decide to post that first video on LinkedIn? Get us all laughing about the world of B2B as we're scrolling through our feeds.
Yeah. I mean, I think I definitely kind of fell into this world rather than like strategically made my way into the creator world, it has to be said, because I suppose I started posting those videos because I am a freelance copywriter. So I needed to kind of raise my profile and keep myself front of mind with people. So I went freelance about 3 years ago. And I started off posting lots of different things. So, you know, as you do, kind of trying out different things. I did do some funny stuff, but it was more kind of written carousels and things. And then I had, in a different part of my life, so I write fiction occasionally, I'd done some videos on Twitter that had done quite well, so kind of funny videos to promote those books. And it was kind of like a merging of, well, I wonder if I could bring those two things together on LinkedIn. I was seeing people like Rob Mayhew doing, you know, similar stuff and thinking, no, okay, LinkedIn has become a platform where you can do that kind of content now. So yeah, about 18 months ago, I did the first one. Just to see what happened, which was quite nerve-wracking. Obviously, putting the first one out there, you're a bit kind of like, oh my god. But it was good and it went really well. So then I did another one, and then I didn't really do it consistently for about 6 months. And then I thought, this time last year, actually, I kind of started thinking, no, actually, if you want to do this, you need to do it. Try and do one a week. So ever since then, last October, I've missed a couple, but I've pretty much done one a week since then. So basically why I got into it was to promote my business as a freelance copywriter.
That's great. And obviously you've become sort of really popular, sort of one of the people that we reference in the office when we talk about funny B2B creators on LinkedIn. What is it about your content that you think is resonating with people? Obviously, you know, it feels a bit hit and miss, kind of posting something and being like, is this going to get a reaction? Is this left? But what do you think has made you find success amongst the B2B crowd?
And I never know, obviously, you know, I could put something out there that will completely flop. You have no idea. You just have to have the kind of confidence to keep going and thinking, well, if one doesn't work, then I'll try something else next week. And if you find it funny, then I think that's important.
At least you've had a laugh.
Yeah, exactly. I laugh. It doesn't matter about anybody else. I think it's relatable. I think that's why it resonates with people, because quite often I will notice something that happens, kind of a little bit of a grit in the machinery of our working lives, and kind of where somebody else might just kind of go, oh, that was a bit annoying, and then move on. I'll think, oh, that was a bit annoying. Oh, I wonder if I could make a video out of that. Do you know what I mean? Because it's something where I think if I'm finding that thing frustrating or irritating or funny or whatever, probably somebody else out there is as well. I think they're going to recognize this scenario. So I think it's a case of people going, oh God, yeah, that's happened to me. So it's that kind of recognition I think that people have. I think that's one reason why it resonates with people. I think possibly another thing is that I can say things that other people might not say. So I have had people message me or get in touch or whatever before saying, I really love your videos. And I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting because I've never seen you interact with them. And they're like, but I can't like them publicly because, you know, my boss might see. And like sometimes I'm maybe poking fun at something that their company is doing. So it's kind of like, maybe it's a cathartic thing of like, oh, thank God somebody is vocalizing what I'm feeling, even though I can't really say it because it would be career limiting to do so.
It's interesting, isn't it? This thing about who gets to say what on LinkedIn. We did a post in for our Untrended magazine about shit posting recently, and got into quite a lot of debate about the fact that the ideal person to be a shit poster is a sort of 40-year-old male freelancer. Is the person who is most free from anybody
Yeah.
criticizing his output. So yeah, definitely. There's been things that I've seen where I've thought, oh, that's really funny. I like that a lot, but then I kind of think, oh, I can't like it because what if client services think I'm having a pointed little jab at them?
Yes,
Not
exactly. Yeah.
great. So what is it that you think is the rise in demand for this kind of content and humor? I think obviously LinkedIn has changed a lot as a platform. What do you think is driving that rise for the need of B2B creators and B2B humor?
I mean, I can only speculate. I'm not going to say that I know the answer to it all, but in terms of what I feel like I've seen, I think during COVID, people obviously went online. They had to go online. They had to find kind of digital places to hang out because they couldn't go to events and things like that. And that's obviously in our day-to-day lives, but also in our working lives. And I feel like during that period, LinkedIn then sort of became a bit more of somewhere where you would perhaps hang out rather than before it might have been like, I've got a new job or I'm looking for a job. It wasn't so much a kind of like, let's make connections with people on that platform and keep it on that platform. So I think even since the end of the pandemic and people have been able to go, we are now coming back and having face-to-face events more and stuff. I think it changed LinkedIn into being somewhere where there was more freedom of, expressing yourself in different ways and finding different tone of voice. So humor is one of those. And I think it does generate little communities. So I notice, underneath some of my posts, I'll get people engaging with each other and then almost going off on little tangents. And it's kind of like they're finding each other because it's a topic that they all recognize or they relate to. It becomes almost a little kind of, I hate this American expression, like a water cooler place where people can come and hang out and, go, it's basically they're kind of saying, I understand this. This is my world. And somebody else is saying, yeah, me too. And I'm going to add and build onto it here. And so it's kind of, it takes on a life of its own. So I think that's something that's definitely changed from a few years ago. And the humor thing, I think, is potentially just another way of standing out. So I think, any industry has to try and evolve. And in B2B, we're always looking at ways to stand out. There's don't want to talk about AI too much, but obviously AI is pushing a lot more content and a lot more. It's so easy to just, spout stuff out there. So if you're a company that's thinking, but how do I make sure people see my stuff and read my stuff and connect with my stuff in amongst this sea of AI content, you need to find a new angle. And I think people are starting to come around to the thought of like, oh, okay, well, maybe humor isn't as scary as I thought it was 10 years ago or whatever. And maybe there's a role for that in my company. So I think that might be another reason why those couple of things coming together, I think, and people seeing it as well. It's just like if you can see other people doing it, particularly in America, perhaps more, I'm seeing more kind of funny B2B creators being used in sponsorship programs and partnerships and things, and a bit more over here. So I think as soon as a couple of companies are doing it, then other companies going, oh, okay, this is safe. Maybe I can try that as well. So I think it's a combination of those things working together.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I always find that with the American stuff, it can sometimes be even funnier because American working culture is that little bit more extreme. So if you look at like Corporate Aaron and that kind of comedy, you think, yeah, I can. Fortunately, I don't work in that world, but I can really imagine that if you work in that world, it would that would resonate a lot. Great. And in terms of the platforms that you're using, obviously you've mostly risen to prominence on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn in many ways is kind of I say this with a caveat because obviously people can be arseholes everywhere, but LinkedIn is kind of a safer space in that people are attached to their profile, they're attached to their name, they're attached to the company that they're working for, perhaps.
Yeah.
I know that you've also started cross-posting onto TikTok as well. So how are you finding the experience different working with TikTok, working on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So I'm kind of trying to do that because I feel like I've been to a few events and things recently aimed at influencers and creators. I really hate calling myself that. I'm just like, I'm a middle-aged woman who listens to the Archers. I'm not a creator. Don't really know what else to call myself. So events aimed at this type of person, and basically they're saying you do need to diversify to a certain extent in if you've got a niche, just put that niche on a few different platforms. You don't have to have like massive followership, but it is good to have a few different platforms if you want brands to come and work with you, because it then gives them more flexibility and they can see that they can get into different audiences through one person in a way they couldn't otherwise. So I suppose that's why I started looking into other things, and TikTok. Really, I just kind of like post stuff on there and then run away, because put it on there almost like a library. It's just like I've got it on LinkedIn, and then I'm active on LinkedIn and I'm engaging with people on LinkedIn, but then I just stick it on TikTok. And I'm trying not to do that 100%, but I do see it more as a kind of broadcast medium. I think of it as, if LinkedIn is a cocktail party, I think TikTok is like a masked ball, because LinkedIn, you do know who you're talking to. You're in a quite a discreet group. You're probably mixing with similar kind of people. They're from a B2B background. TikTok could be out. You've got user 2,723 commented on your videos. There's no profile picture. I don't know who you are. I don't know what your agenda is. I don't. I've only got so many hours in the day as well, to be honest. So it's kind of like I need to focus my kind of engagement, I think, in the place where, as you say, people are attached to their profiles or their companies, and they're not going to kind of go completely off the wall in terms of comments and stuff. To be fair, I've actually not had any kind of, she says, touching wood, dreadful comments on TikTok so far. It is more that thing of like, I just don't know who I'm speaking to, and that feels weird to me. Again, perhaps as a slightly older person as well, I'm not as comfortable in that kind of digital space that a younger influencer might be.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I took myself off TikTok last year just because I was like, I'm wasting too much time on this. This is not
right.
mental health. And you immediately find yourself, if you're sort of trying to pitch creators to clients and say, oh, we could use this person for this campaign, and suddenly being like, oh God, like, have I made myself lose relevance with not knowing who all of these people on TikTok are? But then I think, you know what, it's fine. I'm still on Instagram. I'll be a month late, but I will eventually find out who influencers are. So I'll get there at some point. And so to that point about working with brands and expanding a little bit, I know that you've started recently working with brands to create content for them. So can you tell us a little bit about that process? Obviously, you've got a background as a marketer, which I imagine gives you an advantage. But how has it been going from kind of thinking, I'll post what I like and what I think is funny and see how it goes, to actually working with a brand to produce an output?
I suppose the great thing is that people are coming to you because they've seen what you do and they like it and they want you to do more of that. So it's quite a nice way to be approached for work and to start work, because you're not molding yourself to them. It's more like they want your stuff, kind of thing. So that's a nice starting point. So I've worked with 2 companies so far, and both of them. So one was launching a new proposition and one was launching a completely new company. And the brief was quite loose with both of them. And again, I think that's because, but maybe it's because I'm a marketer, so they know that I will understand what they're trying to get across. But also it's because, as I say, they want what I do to promote them. They don't want me to, in a way, they don't want to direct me, because that doesn't make sense, because they already know that I can do what they want. So the brief was more, this is what we're launching. Have you got any ideas of how to promote it? Literally, and for me that's brilliant, because then I get to have a look at what the proposition is and think, okay, well, I think the most compelling things about this value proposition are X, Y, Z. How do I get that into a video without it feeling like I'm crowbarring a sales message in? Because I still want people to laugh, I still want people to enjoy the video, and they will be turned off immediately if they can tell, in the first 10 seconds that I'm just pushing something. Because I'm never just pushing something anyway. As I say, it's genuinely trying to be a funny video like any other funny video. It just happens to have a call to action at the end of it. So yeah, it's literally just working with them to understand what they're trying to get across, making sure that it's lands that message, but doing it in a way that I find funny and is still my sense of humour and my tone, so that it fits in with all the other videos I'm putting out. It doesn't feel jarring to the people who already watch and like my videos.
It's an interesting one, isn't it, when authenticity is so much a part of the appeal of it. I think, going back to your earlier point about AI, the reason that I like and enjoy creator-led content now is because it feels like a break from AI slop or just like being sold to all the time. So it's quite tricky to balance that.
But that is what these brands are looking for, is they're kind of piggybacking on your voice and your audience in a way. As I say, it's not that they want to try and, well, if they're doing it well, it's not that they want to try and change the way that you're doing things. They just want to kind of benefit from that halo effect of the impact that you're having already.
Definitely. Great. So with that in mind, final question. If you were to give one piece of advice to brands who are sort of saying, okay, we think we should start doing some creator-led content, we think we should start maybe working with some influencers, but they've never done it before, what would you tell them to get the most out of you as a creator and as a sort of partner that they're working with?
I would probably say think about what you like. So just like you've said, what do you like seeing when you're looking at LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever it is? What are you looking for? What really would stop you scrolling and make you watch a video? It would be something that would feel authentic to that creator and that is funny. If that's what you're looking for, it might be that you don't want to start with, maybe humor is a bit too much for your company or it doesn't work for you or whatever. So it doesn't have to be a funny creator. It could just be somebody who's got a lot of authority in that field. But if, even from that point of view, what would you want? You would want their authentic voice. You would want whatever it is that makes them interesting. Are they a little bit controversial? Are they, very forthright? Do they have a really different take on things? And build on that. Don't try to overproduce it, because basically don't use a creator for anything that you could produce in-house. If you want to script it and if you want to film it in a certain way and if you want them to say very specific things, there's no point getting a creator or an influencer to do that, because you could just produce a video yourself. You are trying to, as I say, you're trying to kind of piggyback in a way on what they do and what their audience likes about them. So look for somebody that you think fits well with your brand, that you would enjoy getting content from, and then give them, to some extent, you have to be comfortable giving them free rein. I think that's the thing. And maybe working with creators won't be for every company, because, if you do have, there's certain sectors that will probably that might struggle more than others, where they have to get the legal team involved in signing off every piece of copy or whatever.
Yeah.
You're probably best off not even trying to do it. If you're having to do that for, I've worked with companies who are having to do that for literally a kind of piece of sales enablement. It has to go through kind of like rounds of compliance and legal and stuff. It's just like, sorry, just maybe don't bother with creators.
That's a good step test, I think. If we've done 3 rounds of legal for a social post, we maybe not try and do a create on video.
Yeah, I think about it in terms of, does it fit with the way that your company works anyway, and be realistic about it. But also think about, does it work with the way that you market? So again, it's not a silver bullet. Don't think, oh, I can work with a creator and we're just going to sit back and go, wow, what's going to happen now? Let's watch all the leads roll in. It's kind of like, remember that you're a marketer, and remember you're a womble. Remember you're a marketer, and do it as part of an integrated campaign. So it's just another channel. You've got whatever else you're doing to promote your new proposition everywhere else, but then you've got the influencer channel, or the influencer, the person that you're using, and think up front what you're trying to get out of it and how you're going to measure it, because again, you need to kind of understand if it's worked or not. So you need to be realistic again about what it might deliver. Is it brand level? Are you actually looking for them to drive to a form fill or call to action or whatever? And so make sure that within the campaign you've set up front what you want to achieve, and then you're measuring it so that next time you can decide how well it worked, or if something slightly different would work, or if it doesn't work for you or whatever. But at least you'll know, don't treat it as an isolated, discrete thing, basically, that's just going to work all on its own. It's just another way of marketing your business.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time, Heather. That was really, really full and succinct advice, and I will definitely be relaying that point about the legal team to some clients who are asking questions about creator-led content.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much to Heather for joining us. It's great to hear her perspective from the creator side. Now, panel, over to you. So I think, just to frame the discussion a little bit, let's just chart how we got here. So influencer marketing, creator-led content, it feels quite new, but it does go way back. The example that's often cited is it Wedgwood, who used like royal approval and endorsements to flog his wares? And I've even heard it said that gladiators were actually the first product influencers, although don't ask me what they were selling. Pope Francis famously referred to the Virgin Mary as the first influencer and the influencer of God in her 2019 World Youth Day address in Panama. Not sure about that, but I think we can all agree that at its core, creator-led content works because it's about trusting people, it's about relatability, it's about authenticity. Obviously, when we've been through the process of having like bloggers and Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all felt quite B2C for quite a long time. But in the last few years, definitely as an agency, we are doing more work with influencers and we're seeing a lot more content creators on platforms like LinkedIn. So I guess my first question really is, how much time do any of you actually spend watching creator content? Are you big into the short form video game or?
I think, going back to the Pope reference.
Yep, it's always a good place to start, isn't it?
Yeah,
the Pope.
I think that's creator with a capital C. And I would watch that content.
Oh, we got that confused. It's actually
I would watch that content if it was the creator rather than a creator.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's we should put that in a pitch somewhere.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, isn't it? But I mean, like, we all watch short form video a bit, but how do you feel about influencers and creators, especially increasingly on LinkedIn?
I watch more of it than I thought. So when I got the questions for this episode, when I saw that, I was like, I don't really watch any of this stuff. And then I sort of started monitoring my own usage of social media and what I was engaging with over the past couple of days. And there's definitely more short form video that I'm engaging with and watching all the way through than before. But it is, it's social media algorithm, so it's really tailored to my personal taste. So a lot of it's comedy, sports-based stuff, funnies about golf, which I'm sure will give everyone else the ick.
Bit of allotments.
Absolutely.
Not huge. There's not a huge amount of comedy allotment stuff, which is maybe a niche in the market that I could begin.
I think you could explore that.
Yeah, I could start doing that. So my perception of myself is I don't really engage with a lot of the short form video led by creators, but then the reality is it's quite a lot that goes on my Instagram and TikTok feeds in particular that I will engage with. So I surprise myself there a little bit. But in terms of business or office-based humour, not quite as much.
Yeah, I mean, Louise, you're famously not really on Instagram,
No.
definitely never been on TikTok.
No.
Do you get sucked in on LinkedIn? Is it powerful enough as a format that you start watching it anyway?
Well, I'm not on TikTok. I dabble with Instagram. I do go on
A
occasionally.
little flirt now and again.
I do a little flirt. I'm very into the comedian Catherine Ryan.
Yes.
And I initially went on Instagram to look at videos of her really fat baby, which was
Fair enough.
who doesn't love a fat baby? The fat baby is now a normal sized boy, which is good to know.
Good progress.
But, so I do go on and watch, kind of similar to Jamie. I think I don't watch a lot of it, but I do like to go and look at these comedians. But I am a big user of Reddit, which is formatted very similarly actually to Instagram. And I think you scroll and there's videos. And so actually I'm probably consuming just as much as everyone else while pretending I'm not. So
you've got the moral superiority of saying that you're not really on TikTok, but you are
but I
still
actually
scrolling
insidiously
through
am.
the internet. Yeah. So in terms of specific B2B creator-led content, our CEO John spoke at Cannes this year about the rise of B2B creator content and kind of getting people to be social first and video first. Why do we think that we're seeing this moment where we're using more and more short form video and creator-led content in B2B? What's going on strategically there?
Well, the attention span of the audience and the degree to which it's distracted by the compound nature of all of the things that are on the internet. I think it's just a logical consequence of that, right? So I was thinking about this the other day. It's almost like video content now is becoming what a headline was in a newspaper in the analog world. It's like, it's just the bare minimum information needed to get your attention. And that's what you're dealing with. You're dealing with increasingly simplified, increasingly over shouty communication, right? And everyone has to get their head around that. And I think that's not, again, to say that it's not sophisticated at all, but that's it. So, because what you're not really doing, and I think both of the things you've spoken to, you're not really sitting down and listening to something for half an hour. Of course, people will with this podcast, but, with other stuff, you might just watch it for a couple of secs and skip on. And I think that's what's happening. It's like the tabloidification of communication overall is has well and truly found its feet in B2B. Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Does that feel worrying at all, or is it just you sort of at this point you'll just go with whatever the next trend is?
I think it's cool. I think there has to be a kind of response, doesn't there? In a market of like things that are generally more considered and complex than perhaps a standard sales pitch, which is what happens with B2B, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of complexity in it. So the challenge is always you can't shout your way into a convincing story or argument or offer, whatever it might be. So I think that what then happens is it might even be on the threads, it might even be in the communities. There's something where people have to then go and process, assimilate, do stuff with what they're consuming, unless it's just pure entertainment. But I think if we all challenged ourselves on the pure entertainment factor of anything put out by a company on our behalf that isn't quote unquote entertainment, you know, it's not something you spend a lot of time doing.
I think this is what I find really challenging about B2B creator content, particularly if we're sort of pitching it, is like, how do you draw that line between something that's meant to be entertainment and funny? And the funny is the really key thing, right? It's like, how do you do it without cringe? Like, how do you balance those two needs?
I think it's really interesting that, and I think to pick up on what Billy was saying, the why this is happening so much in B2B, it's B2B brands face the same problems as B2C brands in that they're striving for relevance, and advertising in its traditional forms, it's changing its efficacy. It doesn't work like it used to. You can no longer just go and insert yourself into conversations through adverts like you used to, and you now have to generate interest by allowing people to engage with the content on its own terms. It has to be good in and of itself. We wrote about this in the last Untrended print magazine, where we were looking at how much of advertising can legitimately be considered entertainment, and the answer is probably not very much, particularly even less with B2B.
Yes.
I think in terms of B2B doing it well, it comes back to that core thing around creator-led content, is that if you're going to do it, you have to be true to the idea of creator-led. The creator has to define how it's put out into the market. If you try and control that too much, try and over-script it, you try and prescribe it a little bit too much, it's just going to fall flat, and it's going to be really obvious that your fingerprints are all over, and it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And I think that really is going to be the big challenge for B2B. I mean, all of us on this panel are words people, primarily, 3 writers, strategists. I think we've all probably had feedback on one document or another about too much colloquial language or starting sentences with "and," because these are executives we're talking to.
Yeah.
Now, if we think about that as like a baseline for some B2B creative, and now we're going to say, tell you what, you're going to completely be hands off. We're going to give it all to this creator who's going to try and make it funny, and you can't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
That's very difficult.
I mean, the briefing of it is really challenging. Like we were talking the other day about like how do you actually brief a creator to do something good? Like, what are your experiences of that as a writer trying to kind of hand over the reins of doing the scripting and letting the creator get on with it?
Well, I think kind of, as Jamie mentioned, there's an element of letting go that we need to help our clients do. You know, a lot of our clients, or B2B clients generally, are quite risk averse and do like to control the narrative as much as possible. And at the end of the day, these creators,
you've got to get it through the legal team.
Well, that's one aspect of it. But these creators, they have their platforms, they know what they're doing. This is what they do, and so you have to just give up to the gods of creators and let them do what they're going to do. And I think also you don't necessarily need to brief them in the same way that we would brief within the agency. You don't need these sort of long, complex documents with lots of different things. I think a lot of creators, they're creative, so they maybe think more visually. So we found success with sort of briefing using like mood boards, even like something like Pinterest.
That's nice. Yeah.
Visual references, not just videos, just anything that kind of gives that vibe of like what you want to communicate across. And also I think just remembering the power of a good conversation. As just sending in a long, again, not these long documents, but...
What you're telling me is that after a lifetime of telling client services that they can't do vibe-based briefing, we actually do need to move to a vibe-based briefing model.
Yeah, Lou can do it.
Yeah. Here's the energy that we're going for. Yeah. Do what you want with it.
Absolutely.
Are all content creators creative?
Not in the B2B world, as far as I've seen. Not to know many names.
I think there is a question about the motivation one has to be a content creator and what that represents.
You sent me an article the other day with the stats about the proportion of people who are content creators versus the proportion of people who are online.
So the FT telling you there are 16 million content creators in the UK. I mean, there's that publishing data, isn't there, about in order for all of the books published in the UK to be read by 100 people, you would all have to buy like 100 books.
But I always buy at least 2 copies of Jamie's.
Well, that's the main thing. Yeah, so people read those ones. Yeah. I think that's it reminds me a little bit, and showing my age a little bit, of when blogging became a thing. Is that there were a few outliers who started, and podcasting as well, a few outliers who started early, started well, defined the medium, and then you just get hundreds and hundreds of people, millions, thousands, piling in all at the same time. And I think in general, those people can all call themselves creators, but really, to be a creator, someone has to be maybe paying and watching. I think otherwise you're just shouting into a void. You can call it's like calling yourself an influencer, unless you're being asked to influence something. you're kind of not.
But I think where this could actually work well for B2B is that obviously the more people that do it, the more you have to drill down into a niche to actually be successful.
Yeah.
And the more we have creators that are very niche and have niche audiences, the better that works for B2B. So I think ultimately it could be a win.
So we were talking about this earlier, the difference between the B2B network environment, you know, be that social, digital or physical, and the consumer network, and how those things differ fundamentally. So you think about B2B networks are dense and close-knit, and you're never more than maybe a few degrees removed from somebody of influence, you know. And so the mechanics of it work very differently. So, for example, I think the niche is a good point. You need to find your niche. And then what the market and the clients have to recognize is that those niches might not have hundreds of thousands of engagements every week, but they're very valuable. And they might not look like content creators either. I think there's a very blurry line between people who are active in their industries and communicative, and people who set their stall out as, you know, I'm going to get a very big audience and that's going to be of value to you.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's an important point about, regardless of the tone and everything else with B2B, B2C, the networks are fundamentally different. So the response from B2B to content creation has to be different too. You have to think about it differently to make it work.
I think there's two parallels that I would draw actually within that. I think it's quite useful to find a niche, because it's very hard to, if you're a creator, to be completely generalized, like you're going to appeal to everybody. But I see the people who are trying to make laughs out of the business world in a similar way to I see people who are trying to make laughs out of like parenting or sport. They know their audience, they understand it really, really well, and they pick up on the kind of the cues, the references, the things everybody recognizes within those small worlds. Like,
like when you show a Rob Mayhew video to somebody that's never worked in I showed one to my husband and he was like,
I don't know.
Okay, and I was like, no, this is really funny and really accurate.
Exactly. Like if you showed, so George Lewis is a really great parenting comedian. If you showed that to someone who isn't a parent, they wouldn't find it funny. So I think those niches are really important. And for me, if you're a creator, that's a smart way to go about it if you can do it well. I think the risk with B2B in particular is in business in general. B2B can become incredibly parochial. The in-jokes can be incredibly unfunny to even people who are in that world. You know, I think we've all sat through dinners or ceremonies or stuff like that, which are full of in-jokes and full of little references that make sense to maybe 6 or 7 people in the room, but to those 6 or 7
That's a
people,
big crowd in B2B though.
That, because this is called Creators Without the Cringe, it's when it becomes parochial, and it's when it's like when the SaaS brand be like kind of memes.
The niche is important as well, for a little bit like when social media first popped up. What you get with content creators right now is they're effectively a sort of reflection of the world that they live in, i.e. they are marketing-led, communications-led people doing some work, particularly in B2B. And I think where it will get really interesting is when you start to get domain experts doing things that are, you know, influencer-based and relevant to people in business, that aren't just, you know, how to grow your company, leadership-based stuff, because it's full of niches, B2B. I was going to have a question for you, actually. I wondered, sorry to put you on the spot. What's the most nichest B2B thing that you've written about or done in the last, let's say, few months? Because I know there's many, but how niche could we go?
Well, I've actually only worked for really big brands in the last few months, Billy, so really struggling. But I mean, this isn't recent. This is a long time ago. But if the nichest thing I've ever written about, I always use this example. It's my tiny turkeys. Have I told you about my tiny turkeys?
No.
So it was just before the pandemic when Tier 4 happened, and they had to have like agile manufacturing that could pivot quickly to wrapping smaller turkeys. And I think that's pretty niche in the B2B world, isn't it? And I would love a manufacturing influencer to do some sort of comedic skit about the panic for tiny turkeys on the production line.
That's a good one.
This is not the last few months as well, because the brands we've worked with have been a bit more kind of not that niche the last few months. But the most niche thing I've ever worked on was VAT tax determination software. And I'm going to suggest that may be the only part of B2B where there is no humour to be derived whatsoever. That's my guess.
Yeah, as you can see from our response.
There's nothing you can do with it. There's nothing you can do with it. And I can tell you that having been to a 2-day conference in Brussels about it, there was
Brussels as well.
Yeah, I know, there wasn't a single laugh. Very tough crowd.
So just to flip the conversation a little bit, obviously we're talking about how the kind of creators, what creators themselves need to do to not be cringe. What is the challenge from being agency side and trying to do this kind of work and propose this kind of work? Because one thing, for example, that I struggle with sometimes is platform fluency. I took myself off TikTok a year ago because I felt like my brain was melting out of my ears. And I'm now already in a place where if I have to try and think of who's the right person to do this, because I'm not constantly consuming funny videos or creator content, there's no easy way to search for who is the right person. So how do we as agency people find the right match? Like, what's the do you just have to be on all the platforms all the time?
I think that's where specialism comes in, you know. So you're starting to see influencer, you know, experts in the agency and agency network, be it that they're global influencer businesses like Influential who have got, you know, kind of models about how you can do that at scale, or you might have, you just know where all the people are at any given time. That's what I think happens in that realm in particular. And also in the agency, there'll always be, in our world, you know, whilst you might not be, I think you're talking about being current, Nick. That's what you're talking about, isn't it?
Hey, I mean, it's not necessarily an age thing, because I'm younger than you by just a few years, and I'm not on the platforms.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think that you find the people who know in your agency world and tap into that, or you know, just Google it. You know, that's the other one.
Just Google it and just keep putting the same person in every single pitch.
Yeah.
Well, I think naturally over time that will improve and that will change, because if this starts to become more prevalent and we start to use more creative collaborations in our campaigns, then we all will naturally just get better at it and understand it a bit more.
So I can set up a database, that would a B2B creator database, that would be really helpful. And I've at least £5 for that.
You've already got like a few people doing the kind of, you know, rating stuff, you know, publicly available ratings for B2B UK content creators. You know, they exist. They're in their infancy, but they're there. So yeah, I don't know if it is about finding the folk. I still think the concept rationale for what you're doing it for in the first place is a bigger part of the conversation, really.
Yeah.
I would say the other element of that about how to get it across the line as agency folk, I think, yes, you're right about understanding who the people are on the platforms and platform relevance and those kind of things. But I think you can almost take it away from knowing like what works on TikTok by looking at different kinds of cultural relevance and different cultural signifiers that might help a creator-led campaign really thrive. The best one I've cited before, I mentioned it to John when he did the panel in Cannes, is the campaign Flock Freight did with the presenter of Blues Clues and News, called How Much is a Fuckload? And so they're a freight company. They tapped into a colloquialism around how people measure size of things. So you've got like a little bit, a lot, a load, a fuckload. And
or a shit ton.
Or a shit ton. A shit ton would have been another way of doing it. Instead of getting someone who is kind of social native or that kind of, they got a kids TV presenter.
Yeah, Blues Clues. Run that one by me for the
Blues Clues and You. So Blues Clues and You is an American program. It was presented by Steve Burns quite a while ago. They unpack topics for kids, like they unpack things that kids might not understand. So they took the kind of spirit of that about discovery and understanding, and they gave it a much more reverence by calling it How Much is a Fuckload. And they got him to present this series where he looked at how much is a fuckload in the freight world in a kind of very honest and normal way. They didn't get him to do it as a skit. They got him to do it in his natural way. So it was creator-led. They just said, you be you, do exactly what you would normally do if you were given this brief by Blues Clues, if you were doing it on TV for kids or whatever. It made a lot of sense to their audience. It was primarily American-based, so people were really familiar with Steve Burns. They understood the context around it. It was funny. It had that irreverence we were talking about to a US audience, and it really, really cut through. And I think that was a great example of creator-led marketing. It wasn't using a social media personality or like a camera-facing comedian. It was using someone who exists in a kind of slightly different sphere. So I think when we think about it for B2B, we can think about comedians or sports people or anything like that. We don't have to rigidly think about platform-based social media comedians.
I have now got it into my head that I would like to pitch a B2B campaign presented by Bluey, the cartoon dog.
Yeah, I think that...
I haven't quite worked out the details of that, but I think that would be nice.
I think it'd be...
that one, please.
But he did Strictly, didn't he? He was on Strictly Christmas, so... Or she. I think it's a she, actually, Bluey.
I'm not sure about Bluey's gender.
I think it's she. Bluey and Bingo are both girl dogs.
Yeah.
All I know is that I don't even have children, and it's an incredibly moving programme. So
how much is a fuck ton?
You'll have to watch the series.
It's really good. It's a really good video. It's a fuckload and a shitload. I think a fuckload was up to 40 foot.
Yeah.
And a shitload was like up to 20 foot.
So they get trucks and they put stuff in it and they're like, what's a fuckload? How do we price for this?
Right.
And there was a really great line on that video that I liked. We might not be able to include on the podcast. That was, whatever the size of your load, we'll deliver it. And with that,
Oh, yeah, that's all right.
which I
You can
enjoyed.
keep that.
It's just a
Some
perfectly
people drop
reasonable.
the C-bomb on the podcast. I think that's probably that for life.
I
Isn't
think
that how smutty we can go?
Does anyone else have any other good examples of B2B creator-led content?
I think something I've noticed across various campaigns I've looked at is they tend to work quite well when there's like a social impact angle.
Okay.
And so I think sometimes because the products that these companies are selling are a little bit abstract, not as tangible as like a jar of peanut butter or something, it kind of helps to have that sort of support from telling a story that's a bit more than them. And so an example I really liked was the Code with Clossie, which was Carly Kloss, Taylor Swift's ex-best friend.
All right.
Drama.
Yeah. Don't know, mystery. Total mystery. No one knows. Certainly not me, because I'm actually not really.
No, just not Taylor Swift.
No, not at all. But she partnered with, is it SAP or SAP? Big software lads, and basically all about encouraging women to get into, is it STEAM? So it's science, technology, engineering, arts, and
STEM.
maths.
Oh,
Arts.
We're
We're
it's STEAM now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the girls can do it all.
Science,
Quite.
technology, engineering, arts, and maths. That's just like all the things, though, isn't
Yeah.
it? What's left?
Sorry, you're gonna have to fight for it.
I mean, I get STEM. You put the A in, I think you're opening up a whole new.
I think the girls have been doing the arts for a while, to be fair.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah, well,
we'll move on. We'll move on from that.
But yeah, so the partnership there is obviously encouraging women to get into everything essentially, into steam engines actually, no. So and that was actually an initiative that Carly Kloss started on her own, but then she partnered with SAP, and then they did this whole campaign called Superheroes, where they pulled out some alumni of this scheme and kind of profiled them. And I think it's that kind of thing, like it portrays your brand in a really positive way. It raises your profile.
That's a nice thing for a brand to do, I think, rather than be like, we've got this thing, let's try and find the face for it. It's actually this person who's doing this thing. Are we the right match to get behind it and kind of amplify it?
Yes.
Exactly. So I think that sort of thing is something that B2B brands should look at doing.
That's all for today's episode of Untrended. If you like this episode, make sure to subscribe or follow on your favourite platform so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll be diving into more unexpected ideas about business, creativity and culture. Got a question or a topic you think we should tackle? Send it our way using the link in the episode description. Thanks for listening to Untrended. Catch you next time.